Now, here with us today is Dr. Daren Martin, who's the CEO and founder of the recently launched Global Company Culture Association. It's a group that focuses on helping leaders develop and implement their optimal company culture. He's also an advisor to executives, a keynote speaker, and the author of business books, including the bestselling A Company of Owners. Dr. Daren Martin, welcome in, sir.
Hey, excited to be here.
Absolutely. And, before we get started in our conversation, I know you're doing things across the country, but I know you've got quite a Louisiana tie.
I do. My mom is from Port Barre, Masha, and I was born in Franklin because there was no hospital in Centerville. So I love Louisiana.
Absolutely. Well, good deal. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about corporate zombies. You know, they're speedy, they're efficient, but they have an unquenchable hunger for power and influence, neglecting to innovate. They don't go out of their way to serve customers or solve problems. Why are these corporate zombies rising up? And kind of explain a little bit more about what these corporate zombies are.
So we've got the zombie apocalypse going on out there. If you walk the hallways of a typical corporation, it looks like a Walking Dead, right? So I think that the issue is much bigger than just that they're wanting to advance. If we look across the footprint of work, we have 15% across the globe, a 15% employee engagement rate, which is ridiculous. That means that's a different kind of zombies. A lot of employees are just mailing it in. If you ask, 85% of people say they hate their job. And so it's not surprising to me that we have people who are going, look, I'm just here for me. I'm going to do what's in it for me. And then, I don't care about the rest of the stuff. We have a massive breakdown that's going on in the workplace, and it's been happening actually for quite a while. It's just really now coming much more to the forefront of our attention. And that breakdown is around company culture. We've got cultures that people are not invested in, and consequently, it is kind of every person for themselves.
Now, as we talk about corporate zombies, and they're rising up for many potential reasons, some of those reasons would be that they're unengaged in their current work. And as you talked about, they're kind of laser focused on reaching that management level. I mean, while it may seem good to have those that want to be promoted and will work for that promotion, the job they were hired to do still needs to be done.
Absolutely. We just have such a disconnect between work and the people that are doing the work. We've got a long history with Herb Keller started Southwest Airlines, the most profitable, successful airlines in the history of airlines. And Herb said, if you take care of your employees will take care of the company. He built an incredible culture in which the company was heavily invested in the employees. And guess what? The employees then heavily invested into the company. Years ago, when we were going through a number of different crises and turns, companies started pulling everything away. Work really invaded home. We expected people to return emails at 10 o'clock on a Saturday, but we're still counting the clock when it comes to, hey, can I go to my child's, baseball game at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday? Well, no, those are work hours. You're supposed to be here. So I think this split that occurred over the course of a number of years has really put us in the dilemma where we are today. Not to mention that everything has changed about how we do everything else. The digital revolution has changed how we shop, how we date, how we connect, how we travel. Guess what hasn't changed? Work. Work is still in this very old school kind of static environment. And it's just creating a high level of disengagement with people going, well, look, nobody's watching out for me. I got to watch out for myself and get as far as I can get.
It really is amazing how much social media has just turned things on its axis, if you will. I mean, that was one thing I wanted to talk with you about, how much social media plays an impact in this kind of rise to power or status, if you will. Everyone always putting stuff on Facebook about themselves, so other people can see it, and then other people want to be able to accomplish the same thing. I mean, we've really become a society where we compare ourselves to each other all the time. And that was bound to happen to make its way to the workplace.
Absolutely. And the workplace has been, in many cases, slow to adopt it. I was working at a company, a very large defense contractor, driving some culture change. And one of the things we implemented was, this was years ago, a Twitter-style feed on their homepage so that the community could talk to each other. Mm-hmm. And people would post things like, hey, I need a resource for XYZ. It's fantastic. But then other people would post things like, hey, who wants to go to lunch? Or my office is cold. When management saw that, they went nuts. Mm-hmm. One manager told his employees, look, if I see you posting on there, that means you don't have enough work to do. Mm. Well, the reality is the water cooler's been the water cooler for a long time. I don't think of a manager in their right mind that because I went to get a cup of coffee and we spent a little bit of time discussing the Maverick game, last night, they wouldn't shut that down. Right. But because it was digital, it was viewed in this, we have no time for that. Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot of change that needs to happen. A lot of companies shut down social media, block it. Of course, people are just on their phones. And as I say, if people are spending all day on social media, that's not an employee problem. That's a lack of engagement problem. People ought to be excited about their work and passionate about their work, where they're really invested in that. And then you're leveraging social media to expand the company.
Well, Daren, you mentioned lack of engagement. And according to the most recent Gallup poll on employee engagement, 67% of employees in companies located in the U.S. are unengaged. That really is a huge number. That's a bigger number than I expected. And again, much of the time, these are people who are just unsatisfied with their current job status.
Extremely unsatisfied. I do think it's a company culture problem, and I'll demonstrate that. Mm-hmm. But the number you're talking about is why we started the Global Company Culture Association. We want to drive an evolution at work. Mm-hmm. But if I pull out, I don't know if y'all have them in Louisiana, but In-N-Out Burger, they came to Texas a while back. You walk into In-N-Out Burger, you get great food, you get great service, it's clean. There's all sorts of secret stuff on the menu. People love it. It's a phenomenal experience. You go to another burger place, I won't name any, and it's exactly the opposite. It's just, standing in line, and it's just pure tedium. They both sell burgers. Mm-hmm. It's not about the product people are selling. It's really about the environment that you build for the employees that then make it a great company.
So, and by the way, we don't have an In-N-Out Burger here in Louisiana, which is unfortunate because I've heard nothing but good things about them. But
unfortunate, but you've got a lot of other great food in Louisiana to make up for it.
No, you're absolutely right about that. One thing I did want to ask you about is what are the signs to look for in an employee who's, checking out, becoming disengaged? And is there anything, that some of our managers that are listening, some of our bosses that are listening, anything they can do to save those employees and save that culture in their workplace?
So I think managers, first of all, need to do a little walk around and get, as I say, out of the suite into the street. Go talk to people. Do you love working here? And if people go, it's good, it's fine, that's not acceptable. You got to say, wait, what's going on? I want you to be crazy passionate about coming to work on Monday morning. Right now, people drag themselves in on Monday, they dance out on Friday. So go talk to people. Find out, what are the barriers? Well, I've had the same computer that I've had for 10 years now, and it's super slow, and that makes it a pain to do my work. Whatever it is that you hear, begin to address those things. I just saw a great interview with Julian Menenberg, who is the CEO of Helen of Troy, a multi-billion-dollar company. Mm-hmm. He was very intentional about driving culture change. And it's not something that needs to be just a PS in a company's, vision and mission. It's got to be top priority. When you talk about that 67%, 70% disengagement, this is a crisis. I think the amount of money that is being left on the table by low engagement is the largest silent tax on every company in this country and around the world.
And Daren, before I let you go, I want to get your thoughts on the generations in the workforce. For instance, there's a lot of times I'll hear older people in an older generation complaining about the millennials, and then we're millennials complaining about the older generations. Are there ways that both generations how can both generations learn from each other and help to bridge the generational and communicational gap in the workforce. And I say both generations, I mean millennials and the other generation, the two generations that are above them that are still in the workforce.
So I love that, because the best companies are not monochromatic, right? If you look around the boardroom, everybody looks like you, thinks like you. Well, then, you're missing a lot. Mm-hmm. So I think when it comes to gender, when it comes to race, when it comes to age, the best companies are the ones that get a good mix of all of that. And then they do what you're talking about. Instead of pointing fingers at each other, they listen to each other. They get engaged and learn from each other. I read something recently where if you're over 50, which I am, you ought to consider getting a mentor and make that person 20, right? Not you be the mentor, but you be mentored so they can help show you. But I think it's good to have that dual relationship. So this is not a generational issue. This is much bigger than that. Right. And we need to have a respect for all age groups in the company.
Well, Daren, I think each generation brings a unique perspective. They bring their own perspective. And so for one generation to dismiss another just because they don't think like them, they do it at their own peril, because again, you can learn from the different generations and the different perspectives. And if you learn together, you can make that workforce that much stronger.
Absolutely. I 100% agree.
All right. Daren Martin has been our guest. Daren, before we let you go, I know you've got, we mentioned your best-selling book out there. I want to give you the chance to let our listeners know about that, what's it called and how they can find it.
So A Company of Owners has been my absolute bestseller. It's in its fourth printing. I actually talk about zombie employees. It came out 3 years ago in that book. Stacy's my rock star, and my zombie employee is called Crawley. But that's available on Amazon. They can find me at Daren Martin, Daren Martin.com, and find the association at globalcompanycultureassociation.com.
Thank you, Daren. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, awesome. Anytime.
Absolutely.
I'm going to have to do this in studio sometime so we can then go to lunch.
Oh, absolutely. You got to make the trip down to Lafayette.
I love Lafayette. Thank you.
Thank you, Daren.